Hello, I'm Maria Titizian.
And I'm Rubina Margosian, and this is the Week in Review.
Every week, we bring you the stories shaping Armenia and the region.
From politics and policy to social issues and conflict, we break down the news and what it means for you.
This week in the news, Putin wants pro-Russian forces to participate in Armenia's upcoming elections. Russian Deputy Prime Minister warns Moscow may be forced to reconsider economic ties with Armenia. An anti-corruption committee uncovers alleged vote-buying scheme linked to Samvel Karapetyan's party ahead of June 7 elections. These stories and more in our weekly roundup of the news.
Well, as Maria already mentioned, Moscow would very much like for pro-Russian political forces to be able to take part in Armenia's upcoming elections, Vladimir Putin told Nikol Pashinyan this week. The remarks came during a meeting between the two leaders amid what appeared to be renewed strain in Armenia-Russia relations. Speaking to the press, Putin said Russia has a great many friends in Armenia and that many political forces are pro-Russian in their orientation, adding that Moscow would very much like them to be able to participate in the country's domestic political processes during the upcoming parliamentary elections.
It's interesting, right? I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Yes, please do.
I mean, how is it that a leader of another country sort of tells this country that I want pro-Russian forces?
And the choice of words is very interesting. Pro-Russian, what is like?
What does that mean?
What does that really mean in this context, pro-Russian?
It's not like
we'll find out. Middle, democratic, anti-democratic, more authoritarian. It's pro-Russian. That's a whole category of its own. Mm-hmm. Well, this is interesting that this is happening in front of the cameras. This is happening while both leaders are sitting across. It's also very interesting that this is happening. This is coming from Putin's mouth.
Not from one of his, Zakharova or others.
Uverchuk or others.
Well, although Uverchuk, we'll talk about that in a second.
Well, he made up for it.
Yes.
Well, the setup was interesting. I don't know if this has happened in Armenia's history before so publicly.
Well, I mean, we could argue that in 2013, when Serge Sarkisyan went to Moscow and came back and did a complete foreign policy U-turn, the same kind of conversation happened. But I can't remember now.
It was not public.
It was not public. Yeah.
Well, in an apparent reference to Russian-Armenian billionaire Samvel Karapetyan, who is currently under house arrest, Putin said some pro-Russian figures are currently imprisoned or in places of non-freedom, basically, if you...
In the Russian,
if you translate verbatim. Despite holding Russian passports, he added that this is your decision, that's addressing Pashinyan. We do not interfere, but we would like them to be able, at the very least, to participate in the domestic political processes. Now, this again is unclear because he's clearly participating in the domestic political processes very actively.
Samvel Karapetyan.
Yes, at least his political force. Yeah. Well, Pashinyan responded that only citizens holding exclusively an Armenian passport may participate in the elections. This is in reference to Karapetyan's Russian citizenship. He also said that there are no participants in the political process sitting in places of confinement.
The words that Putin had used, right?
The Armenian prime minister added that Armenia is a democratic country, where he said some believe there is even too much democracy, noting that social media operates without restrictions. It was a heated discussion. Mm-hmm. Putin also addressed Armenia's EU aspirations, saying Moscow viewed discussions on deepening ties with Brussels with complete equanimity, but stressing it should be transparent and straightforward, stated upfront, as they say, before setting sail. It is quite upfront, I think. I don't know what they're suspecting is happening.
They passed a bill in parliament.
Yeah. He cautioned that Armenia benefits from purchasing Russian gas at significantly lower prices than in Europe and has gained from its membership in the Eurasian Economic Union, adding that any decision on future alignment rests with Armenia's leadership and experts. It's nice that he adds this at the end. I'm not interfering and it's up to you.
I'm just giving you advice.
Yes. Well, Nikol Pashinyan, for his part, said that while simultaneous membership in two blocs is not possible, Armenia's current approach remains compatible with both unions. He added that Yerevan would continue to pursue both tracks as long as feasible, and that any eventual decision would be made by the citizens of Armenia.
Well, the two leaders also clashed on the CSTO. This is the Collective Security Treaty Organization, a security alliance, a military alliance that Armenia it's not clear a member of anymore. So Putin appeared to conflate the CSTO's mandate to defend Armenia's internationally recognized borders with Russia's role in Nagorno-Karabakh. So the CSTO is like NATO. An attack against one is an attack against all, right? So reiterating Moscow's controversial stance, he argued that after Pashinyan recognized Nagorno-Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan in 2022 in Prague, CSTO intervention in what had become an intra-Azerbaijani matter would have been entirely inappropriate, Putin said. Armenia's formal recognition of Azerbaijan's territorial integrity came in October 2022, weeks after the Azerbaijani incursion into Armenia's border areas. This is namely near Jermuk. This had nothing to do with Karabakh and concerned Armenia's internationally recognized borders. The CSTO refused to unequivocally support Armenia. This is where everything turned, right?
Yes.
So after 2022, Azerbaijan invades Armenia. CSTO does nothing. So he's conflating it,
CSTO
saying,
basically says, we're not clear what your borders are right now, so we cannot comment on this,
Yeah.
but we are very willing, after 2 months, I think,
Yeah.
after quite a time, said, we are very willing to send in a fact-finding mission.
Yes. Well, look, just again for our listeners, as for Nagorno-Karabakh, it was never within CSTO's zone of responsibility. We all knew that. Nobody was calling the CSTO when Azerbaijan attacked Nagorno-Karabakh. It was when Azerbaijan attacked Armenia. Anyway, Pashinyan responded that Armenia had recognized Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan only after senior Russian officials had publicly done so. As for the CSTO, Pashinyan said that in 2022, Armenia faced a concrete situation in which the CSTO's mechanisms should have been triggered, but they were not, and his government is still unable to explain to its people, to its citizens, why the CSTO did not respond in spite of the obligations enshrined in the treaty. Well, anyway, according to a Kremlin readout, the sides held talks on the current state and prospects of Russian-Armenian strategic partnership and alliance, integration, cooperation within the Eurasian space, and topical issues on the regional agenda, specifically the development of economic transport, logistical links in the South Caucasus. Nonetheless, this was a very tense meeting between the two leaders, something that we had not yet seen.
Absolutely. And the tension continues because separately, Russia's Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Uverchuk warned that Moscow may be forced to restructure its economic relations with Yerevan when comparing words with actions from Armenian leaders. Addressing relations with Armenia in a lengthy interview with the state-run TASS agency published shortly after Pashinyan's departure from Moscow, Uverchuk also accused Armenia's leadership of attempting to push out Russian businesses, namely the state-run Russian Railways concession over Armenian railroads and the expropriation, this is his words, we call it nationalization, of the national grid company owned by Samvel Karapetyan, a Russian national, as we mentioned at length initially. He also called on Armenian businesses to soberly assess the prospects of selling Armenian fruit, vegetable, flowers, mineral water, and alcohol on the European market, essentially telling Armenian entrepreneurs to lobby the government to keep Russian businesses in Armenia or face consequences in Russia. Meanwhile, Russia's Federal Agricultural Watchdog raised concerns over a surge in plant and animal products arriving from Armenia, with officials suggesting much of the goods may not actually originate there. And additionally, in an interview, the agency said that Armenia has been providing European goods with easy access to its domestic market in ways that fall short of the standards required under the Eurasian Economic
I'm sorry,
Union.
I have to.
So they're hitting from all sides. It's like
Yeah.
export, don't export, import, don't import,
yeah.
quality, not quality, European quality, not good
Our
enough with
quality.
Eurasian economic, and your quality not good enough for like all fronts.
Yeah. Well, Overchuk wasn't satisfied with this. He went and he spoke critically of TRIP. Perhaps the first time a senior Russian official has done so, he claimed that because Armenia sidelined Russia from the trilateral negotiation process, he was referring to the working group with Azerbaijan, and sort of oriented toward Washington, it altered regional security in ways that created new dangers for Armenia. He also insisted that before Armenia exited the Russia mediated process, the trilateral framework was Armenia's best mechanism to ensure traffic went through Armenia rather than around it. I don't know how he envisioned this, but anyway,
Under Russian control,
right.
but
While
on Armenian soil.
right, okay. So while now Turkey is already building a direct line to Nakhichevan, see, they always use the Turkey card because they know it raises sensitivities in Armenia, right? Whenever they want to say, oh, you guys are sidelining us, Turkey's coming into the region. He also commented on the data centers, noting that they create almost no jobs, and Armenia will gain little from this, and the long term effects will be largely negative. He also warned that if decisions on a new nuclear plant are not made by the end of 2026, Armenia could face a future gap between Mezamor's closure and any new plant coming online. He argued only Russia has operational small modular reactor technology, while the US has built none yet and are 12 to 15 years from export readiness.
Meanwhile, speaking of Metsamor, the nuclear power plant in Armenia has been taken offline for 5 months, starting April 1, as part of a program to extend its operational lifespan until 2036. As Uverchuk says, it expires this year. The Minister of Infrastructure, David Khudatian, said that the move comes amid rising electricity generation from solar power. The plant's current operational period is set to expire this year, as we mentioned, and work is underway to extend it by another 10 years. During a weekly briefing, Nikol Pashinyan also spoke about this, said Armenia must rely on solar energy to achieve greater energy self-sufficiency. At the same time, the government is in talks with several countries on building a new modular nuclear plant, with discussions involving the United States, France, China, Russia, and South Korea.
Meanwhile, Russia's transport minister stated that Moscow is not conducting negotiations on the transfer of the concession for the management of Armenia's railways to Kazakhstan, as proposed by Armenia's prime minister. He said Russia has no plans to hand over the concession and that Armenian officials have not raised the issue in official discussions.
It's another thing that Russia officially uses. You haven't officially applied for CST or replied. You haven't officially addressed this during.
Whenever it
official-
suits.
yeah, well.
Yeah.
You know, this hybrid warfare takes a whole other dimension with everything that we've read so far. It's not so hybrid anymore. It's very direct. However, Maria Zakharova, spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, also addressed the issue of hybrid threats.
I thought it was hilarious, actually.
Comment. Well, it's not as funny when you see that Mirzoyan has actually started the conversation. Well, commenting on earlier remarks by Arat Mirzoyan, who had said Armenia is not opposed to Russia sharing its expertise on hybrid attacks, Zakharova said that if Armenian counterparts are interested, Moscow remains open to dialogue through foreign ministry channels or to engaging relevant specialists in the area of interest to Armenian partners. Separately, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov dismissed European Union efforts to support Armenia in countering hybrid threats. He said European officials tend to see Russian interference everywhere, adding that similar claims are likely to be made in the context of Armenia's elections. So this is a funny situation. We are asking Russia to kind of participate in combating hybrid threats.
Their hybrid warfare against us.
Also, we have a task force from the European Union who's here solely to deal with Russian, not any other, not Azerbaijani, not any other, Russian hybrid threats.
There you go.
It's going to be an interesting cross-section, definitely, in Armenia.
In other news, Armenia's defense minister Suren Babikyan held talks in Paris over the weekend with senior French officials, focusing on expanding military cooperation, education and training, and advisory support. In meetings with French Prime Minister Sébastien Lecornu, who previously oversaw the launch of bilateral defense ties between the two countries, both sides stressed the need to deepen cooperation. Babikyan thanked the Prime Minister for maintaining strong engagement, while Lecornu awarded him the Legion of Honor by decree of President Emmanuel Macron for Babikyan's contribution to the advancement of bilateral ties. Separately, Babikyan met with private defense company representatives. Armenia's defense ministry reported an agreement with Safran Electronics and Defense, from which Yerevan is known to have previously procured binoculars and sensors.
And Armenia's foreign ministry says it expects the normalization process with Azerbaijan to help curb hostile rhetoric and what it describes as fabricated narratives. So now, this is what it's in reference to. It's in reference to a statement which came after Azerbaijan's foreign ministry accused Armenia of perpetrating the mass killings of Azerbaijanis in 1918, referring to the events known as the March Days in Baku as genocide. Those events took place in March of 1918 when interethnic violence broke out in Baku and surrounding areas amid the collapse of the Russian Empire. At the time, the city was controlled by the Baku Soviet, headed by Stepan Shahumyan. Casualties were largely sustained by Muslim communities. Azerbaijan portrays the events as genocide carried out by Bolshevik forces with the support of the Armenian Revolutionary Federation. So, responding to these remarks, Armenia's foreign ministry said that over decades of conflict, hostile and unreliable narratives have emerged and continue to be used in Azerbaijan at the state level. The spokesperson said that Yerevan hopes the peace process will contribute to stable coexistence and good neighborly relations while also eliminating hate speech. The statement from the foreign ministry also said that the leaders of the two countries had agreed in Washington to close the chapter of hostility between the two peoples and open the way of normalized relations after years of conflict.
An 18-year-old has been placed in 2 months pretrial detention after attempting to strike Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan. The incident took place last Sunday, on Palm Sunday, at a church in Yerevan, as Pashinyan was leaving the Mass. Video footage shows the young man becoming agitated before moving toward Pashinyan, who is heard instructing security not to respond. After the incident, authorities detained 3 people: the student, whose name is David Minasyan, his twin, Michael Minasyan, and another individual,
Accompanying individual.
What?
Accompanying individual.
Gevorkyan. Investigators charged David Minasyan with hooliganism. His brother was charged with organizing hooliganism and was released under a travel ban, while Gevorkyan, also accused of organizing hooliganism and interfering with a public official, was released on bail. Minasyan is currently hospitalized after fainting earlier today. This is a second such incident since being detained. He had previously lost consciousness en route to the detention facility, was taken to hospital, and later transferred back into custody. His lawyer maintains that both brothers have medical conditions incompatible with detention. The case has drawn criticism from some civil society representatives and human rights advocates who have called for David Minasyan's release, arguing the act did not appear premeditated. At the direction of human rights defender Anhait Manasyan, representatives from her office visited the detainee, reviewed case materials, and raised concerns about his medical care and access to education because apparently he's a student. The office also reiterated broader concerns over the use of pretrial detention, which we've talked about at length here at EVN Report, warning that its overuse risks undermining public trust in the justice system.
And this is actually one of the stronger statements from the Ombudsperson's office in recent years,
at least.
Yes, well. And the American University of Armenia moved classes online on Monday for just a day as a precaution following threats by Iran to target U.S.-affiliated universities in the region, and a step also taken by several American institutions in the Middle East. It resumed in-person classes the following day after Armenia's education ministry said there was no threat to the university. However, I find it funny that Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi, in the middle of a war in his country, he had posted on X in Armenian that same day and thanking Armenia for providing humanitarian assistance. He said the support of the Armenian government and people, including assistance with relocation efforts, was highly appreciated. He added that the centuries-old ties between Iran and Armenia had once again demonstrated their strength in a difficult moment, and said the gesture would be remembered by the Iranian people, basically saying, relax,
we're not attacking Armenia. I know. I mean, look, there was so much discussion about the decision that the university took. And, full disclosure, I teach there, and I think we got the email close to midnight. And my first thought was, Armenia is the only country in the entire region that's doing okay with Iran. Why would Iran attack?
But also imagine strategically, it's right next to the parliament and the presidential
Yeah.
building.
Well, never mind the students who would be killed if they attacked.
But the impact on the political situation that they missed by,
I mean, we're laughing, but it's not
15
funny.
meters, they
Okay.
would be hitting Armenia's parliament.
Okay. Well, I'll tell that to my students next time I see them. Well,
You
okay.
guys were online,
I wasn't teaching that day, so it was fine.
but the parliament was working.
Yes, it was. Well, okay. In other news, in good news, I suppose, crime rates are down in Armenia. This from the Prosecutor General's office, according to their 2025 report. Overall, crime fell by 3.2% compared with 2024, while the rate of solved cases rose to about 30%, up about 8% from the previous year. Officials said the majority, about 82%, were minor or mid-level offenses, and the share of serious crimes declined slightly as well from a year earlier. At the same time, however, drug-related offenses have increased significantly. Cases involving drug trafficking rose by 20%, including an almost 13% increase in selling of drugs. Meanwhile, 14 killings linked to domestic violence were recorded in 2025, up slightly from 13 a year earlier. Incidents involving serious bodily harm declined to 10 from 15. So, although we still have domestic violence, a slight increase in general, crime has dipped a bit.
And on with the election digest.
Sure.
It's the almost one before the last part of our podcast,
Yes.
where we talk about election-related news.
Because we love everything about the elections.
Well,
Okay.
like it or not.
Yeah.
Armenia's anti-corruption committee said it had uncovered an alleged vote-buying scheme ahead of the June 7 parliamentary elections. Investigators said a coordinated group planned to distribute bribes to residents of the Armavi region to secure turnout and voters for Russian businessman Samvel Karapetyan's Strong Armenia party. The group allegedly operated through the In Our Way NGO. This is the initial NGO before they established the political party, registering residents as employees and tasking them with recruiting voters, while payments were issued in stages and presented as salaries to conceal their purpose. The committee said recruitment targeted individuals with large social networks and voting eligibility. It added that despite a legal ban on pre-election charity, financial assistance was also distributed under the guise of covering medical expenses. 5 people have been detained in the ongoing criminal investigation. The committee also released an audio recording in which individuals appear to discuss registration and unpaid or disputed wages, including references to a group of 180 people and which party to give these people or / votes to. Well, it says appear to discuss. It's very clear what they're discussing. They're
Deja
naming
vu.
parties. One is being almost sarcastically saying, those 180 people, I know what to do with them. I'll probably give them to civil contract if I decide. So, and then one of them is clearly saying, don't speak things like this over the phone. Don't say these things. And he keeps saying, don't say these things when it's apparently too late because it's more than obvious what they're talking about. So it's another one of Armenia's, leaked audios where we don't know where it originated from. And however, no one's contested the authenticity of the audio so far. A lawyer, however, representing Strong Armenia said the conversations reflect employment relations, arguing that payments tied to campaign-related activities do not in themselves constitute vote buying.
Well, separately, the investigative committee said it is examining another case involving alleged financial incentives to attend court hearings and public actions linked to Samvel Karapetyan. Investigators said the head of In Our Way NGO office in Dilijan is accused of paying a former local official to attend Karapetyan's court hearings and, again, related events. The suspect has been charged with coercion or inducement to participate in assemblies, and he has been detained.
Meanwhile, it's all about Strong Armenia,
Yep.
mainly this segment today. The Strong Armenia Party is set to contest the elections as part of an alliance. This week, it formed an alliance with New Era, Nordaraşarjan, and United Armenians, Միավորված Հայեր parties, both of which are largely unknown to the public.
And to us, you had to do a little bit of a search, Rube.
Yes, I had to look into them. Nordaraşarjan, well, basically was registered. The only information I found was registered after 2021, not a year or anything. And Միավորված Հայեր, this is the United Armenians Party, has more of a history. It was on and off participating in elections, never got into parliament.
And led by an 83-year-old, right?
Yes. Well, the new era is led by lawyer Harutun Harutyunyan, who was elected party chairman only days ago. He had spoken about what he describes as legal chaos in the country and the need to ensure judicial independence, saying the investigative bodies, prosecution, and broader law enforcement system are in state of disarray. The United Armenians Party is led by an 83-year-old Ruben Avakian. The memorandum on forming an alliance with Strong Armenia was signed not by the party's chairman, but by its authorized representative, Nairi Sarkisyan. Sarkisyan has criticized Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan in the past, describing the government's decision to raise pensions and shorten mandatory military service as vote buying, and alleging that Pashinyan could resort to election fraud to remain in power. This coming from a party who's already has at least three cases previously. That couple who were saying we would, damage your house if you don't register to our party, and the two cases that we're talking about today.
And the I Am Against Everyone movement and the Nijar or Scales constitutional movement said they will unite around a joint program. In a statement, the I Am Against Everyone said the two groups share similar views on preventing the concentration of power in Armenia. It said the alliance reflects an effort to set aside ideological differences and personal ambitions in a polarized environment, adding that cooperation will focus on smaller shared priorities based on common values and principles. The statement said the aim is to consolidate Armenia's political field ahead of the elections.
Well, if you read this statement from them, you think they actually have a plan or personal ambitions, because there's no leading person in this.
Well, that's the whole point of I Am Against Everyone, right? They're going to vote for us, and then we're going to come fix everything and leave.
Yes. There's going to be a transition.
I've already said my piece about it. I'm going to hold my tongue.
And the Republican Party of Armenia, led by former President Serge Sarkisyan, said it will not take part in the upcoming elections, but in not so direct way, not directly.
What does that mean?
Was the wording. Maybe they will endorse a party, but they themselves are not taking part. That's what I understood from the wording. The party participated in both previous snap elections. In 2018, it ran independently, but fell short of the 5% threshold, winning 4.7% of the vote. In 2021, it joined forces with former National Security Service Chief Artur Vanetyan under the I Have Honor Alliance. The bloc received 5.2% of the vote, below the 7% threshold for alliances, but still entered parliament as the third largest force, in line with Armenia's law requiring at least three factions to be present in parliament.
And an interesting note, on Monday, we will be publishing the second wave of our election poll. The first one we published February 26th. We're going to have 4. The second one is on Monday. Then we'll have 2 more leading right up to the elections. And there's some interesting results compared to the first poll, but we'll just let everybody wait until Monday. And we're going to be publishing it in Armenian and in English. So look for that.
However, let's speak of things we've already published.
Please,
things we published last week.
Okay. Well, let's start with Statecraft and Governance by Derses Kopalyan. It's called Iran War, Escalation, and Armenia, Managing Ambiguity and Risk. And he had written a few months ago about how Armenia should go about in this conflict to the south of us, and called it strategic ambiguity. So he argues that the Iran war has produced 2 escalatory models. The U.S.-Israeli escalate to de-escalate, and Iran's horizontal escalation strategy. And he's reiterating that Armenia's response has to be strategic ambiguity, that is, avoiding entanglement while preserving ties with these competing partners, because Armenia has close ties with both. And to be successful in risk mitigation, Yerevan must use situational ambiguity to navigate crises and de-risk the danger of entanglement. Basically, yeah, it's a very interesting piece, sort of what Armenia has to do in this very impossible situation that it finds itself in.
And this week we published an opinion piece by Zohrab Manatsakayan, a former foreign minister. It's called Armenia's Transit Moment is Bigger Than 43 Kilometers. He's talking about the trip and he's saying it is more than a transit route. It's a strategic opportunity within shifting Eurasian trade networks. And as global supply chains realign, Armenia's ability to integrate, diversify, and position itself will determine whether it gains relevance or remains sidelined. Well, Russia will disagree with Zohrab Manatsaghanyan because trip was a big mistake and it put Armenia in a lot of danger.
According to the Kremlin, yes. We have a very interesting piece by Laura Yumshajekian. It's called Getting Sicker Younger. And it's looking at how the rates of cancer are increasing, but the age is dropping. So more younger people are getting sick, and they're getting diagnosed late. And as cases rise, with limited screening, delayed detection, and unequal access to modern treatments, this is putting a strain, obviously, on the healthcare system, on patients and families. So, yeah, something to look out for.
And we did publish our lifestyle section
last week and this week.
Last week and this week. Salt. This time it was called Contemplation because that's where basically a lot of the pieces were going. One of the pieces is by Melody Sevakian. She's a DJ from Australia.
Yeah, very cool.
And she's interning with us.
And we're digging the Australian accents. Between her and Laura Yumshajekian, both from Australia, by the way.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, it's titled Where Shame Unravels, a Night in Yerevan's Techno Scene. She goes alone to
remote area, maybe.
High Film Studios, which has a rave scene these days, and experiences it. And it's like comes away with a lot of thoughts about moving through darkness, music and memory, and confronts the expectations placed on her because the darkness there and the anonymity give you that possibility.
And we published a photo story by David Nersesian. It's called Iranian Creatives Finding Form in Armenia. And he talks to a number of Iranian immigrants, I guess you can call them, creatives who live in Yerevan and who are navigating studying. Some of them study at the music school, work, identity between two worlds. And as they try to build new lives in Armenia, they still remain tethered to this concept of home and memory and an uncertain future that's really shaped by longing and belonging. So it's a lovely piece.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see some of them have been here quite long. You would assume that it's recent following the conflict or
way before the conflict.
17 years, 5 years. One is a stand-up artist who does stand-up in Armenian.
I know, I thought that was hilarious. We should go check him out, actually.
Go. It's not far from where we are, actually.
And you did a podcast this week, Rubina, with Arsen Kharadian, the founder of Alik Media. And it's called Bending the Ear of the Nation. How was that conversation?
It was a very necessary conversation, but I think it's about subjects we're all discussing, and maybe let's discuss that more publicly. It's about the pre-election landscape, what's happening. It's about this rhetoric of war coming back from both sides. Kochayan is exploiting it. We saw Pashinyan also exploit it in a way. And what are the differences here? And, why is there a lack of political activity in the youth? Why didn't we get new forces? While we had a pretty nice, lengthy time between 2018 and now to get like these new political forces.
But we also had war and ethnic cleansing and
which could also be incentives to kind of become more active politically, where you have election after election when you don't really have a choice, or the choices between the lesser of two evils. It was this just general conversation, but very interesting in a Kharatian kind of a way. And we did publish articles in Armenian, as we are trying hard to do. We did publish Zorab Mnatsaganyan's op-ed in Armenian, so you can just switch the language on the website and read it in Armenian.
Or listen to it, because we have the audio.
Also, listen to it. We have audio articles for 2 years now. I don't think we promote them enough.
We don't, yeah. We're not good at that.
And another thing, because April 2 was International Autism Day, so on the occasion we translated Ani Pogosyan's article, which is about her own personal experience of being the mother of a child with autism.
And we met her in our office.
We met her daughter at the office. And it was a very interesting piece, and it was also very interesting to reread it in Armenian, because a lot of the nuances or what she was trying to say maybe escaped me while I was really fast reading the English, and then in translation a lot of like new shades. I discovered new shades.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, that's the kind of week we've had here in Armenia. Thank you for listening. Have a safe and peaceful weekend, and we'll be